You're listening to the Access Success Podcast, produced by Access U, a division of Access Advertising and Public Relations. Hey, let's do something big. I'm your host, Rachel Schneider. Welcome to the Access Success Podcast, where we highlight important topics focused on education in every form it takes. Have you seen those cartoonish generated portraits people are posting online everywhere to their Instagram, Facebook? That's a result of a recent trend in artificial intelligence, or AI, generated artwork. I actually did it myself, downloaded an app called Lensa, and paid about $6 to get 50 uniquely generated portraits of my face based on the 10 selfies I uploaded. Personally, mine ranged from kind of scary to colorful to imaginative depictions to just totally ridiculous. So if you try it for yourself, you might get some similar outcomes. But little did I know, AI art has actually been a controversial topic in the creative community for years. Access U Art Director Olivia McKinney is joining me today to discuss this more. So thanks for being on today, Olivia.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Yeah, so when did you first hear or learn about AI-generated artwork? And for people who don't know, how does it work? What is this?
Yeah, so it seems like it's been around for a while, but it really just came to my attention in the last maybe 6 months. I'd heard about a little bit on podcasts, and every once in a while when I would use Instagram for work, I would see something about it. But it's apparently been around for a few years now. But basically, AI art is just the process of using artificial intelligence programs like Midjourney or Dolly for the purpose of creating artwork. So this is basically accomplished by typing in a string of words or a prompt into a generator, which then scrapes images, illustrations, and other things from sites across the internet and just compiles them all to create an image that it thinks best matches the prompt that you typed.
Okay, so it does need some type of initial direction first before it all starts.
Yes, so it's not just a big floating thing out there that's just generating art on its own, yeah.
Okay. Well, and as a professional artist and designer, what has been your reaction to AI over the years?
I think definitely my gut reaction was, when I first heard about it, was, wow, that's crazy. And not really sure if it was going to catch on, because there are so many artists making traditional art, and I was just thinking, I'm not sure if this is going to stick or not. But it really has gotten quite a foothold, and the advances in technology that have happened even in the last few months with this have been crazy.
And what are some of those advancements? Because when we think about AI and just the premise of like robots having a mind of their own, I don't think that we maybe thought it was this advanced as it is now. So what are some of the things that we're hearing that it's capable of doing now, or seeing what it's capable of doing?
Yeah, so it is capable of creating things like concept art. Even recently, there was a short film that was directed and written by artificial intelligence. I've seen it used to illustrate books and all kinds of things. So it's kind of touching all these different creative careers in different ways.
Right. And I remember you telling me about some directors in Hollywood and animators that are commenting about this type of art, and they feel very strongly about it.
Yeah, it's been crazy to see just the breadth of careers and interests that this is stretching to. I really liked what director Guillermo del Toro had to say when he was being interviewed for his new Pinocchio film. He said, quote, "I consume and love art made by humans. I'm completely moved by that, and I'm not interested in illustrations made by machines and the extrapolation of information," unquote. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such an interesting sentiment, and one that I think I definitely agree with. Hayao Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli was shown an AI animation concept way back in 2016. And his quote was, "I would never wish to incorporate this technology into my work at all. I strongly feel it is an insult to life itself," unquote. he also mentioned that he felt like we were nearing the end of times and that humans are losing faith in ourselves. So it's quite, there have been some strong sentiments for sure.
Absolutely. And, as I mentioned earlier, it is kind of unsettling to think about how AI can generate a whole script for a movie and give, direction for like a short film that you showed me. That was
it was bizarre.
It was bizarre. It was
Yeah.
trippy to see, especially with the premise being that like AI takes over the world. Like it wrote that
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Um, Eek.
So
Okay.
it was a little scary. I think basically what happened was it gave the user who was asking for a script, it gave them multiple different ideas for a script, and they just happened to choose the AI takes over the world one, I guess, because they thought it would be most interesting. But still, it's kind of scary to think that an AI would also come up with that idea on its own. So,
Right. Right. Well, and with what those directors had to say, why do you think AI has become so controversial in that way?
I think mostly it's the uncertainty now of what is going to happen with creative careers because of all the advancements that AI is making, just the leaps and bounds in which it's growing. I recently saw a YouTube video pop up in my feed on YouTube. I can't remember who the creator was. I wish I could say who it was, but it was titled Creative Careers to Avoid Because of AI. Things like concept art, I think, is a big one that AI is going to touch or is already touching. So that's going to be very interesting to see. I've seen graphic design, I've seen some logos done.
How does that make you feel as, a professional in this industry? Did you ever think your job as an artist would be in danger like this potentially?
Not really. I remember being in college in a classroom one night with my professor and all my other classmates, and him telling us um, robots can't think creatively, so a robot's never going to take your job. And that was back in maybe 2019, maybe early 2021 or 2020. And it's just crazy to be sitting here now, just a few years later, and not being so sure of that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing about the research that you've done and what we've seen through the news, it's crazy how AI is causing this weird gray area in ethics and copyright and leaving artists wondering whether or not they're going to keep their jobs. And I know you mentioned people are also selling the prompts that they've used to create AI art. So, is that similar to like if you go to a craft store and somebody sells it paint by numbers? Because that's what it reminds me of. But just the
Right,
fact that they're selling those step-by-step instructions to create something with a machine and just copy and copy and copy it.
right. So I think the difference between something like buying a paint by number of a piece of art is that in most cases, I mean, like you'll find Van Gogh things because I think that's public domain now, so you can kind of
Mm-hmm.
print that however you want. Um, but most artists would sell their work to be turned into things like that. And the problem that we're seeing with the AI generators is that they are scraping images and illustrations from photographers and artists without their consent to build these new
Mm.
images. And so it's brought up this whole issue of ethics and copyright of if this generator is pulling images, say I could type in a string of words and say like cat in the style of Tim Burton, because
Mm-hmm.
Tim Burton has a very recognizable style. So we'll just use him as an example.
Sure.
It would pull in a bunch of Tim Burton images and a bunch of images of cats and illustrations of cats and kind of blend them together. So since it's pulling Tim Burton's work or things that are similar,
Mm.
it's infringing basically on copyright. So it's kind of this strange gray area of intellectual property rights and copyright without consent.
Right. Because if that person then, using the same example, if they, typed cat and Tim Burton in and they got, a picture of a Tim Burton style cat and they decided to sell that, then I wonder if legally if any cases like that have gone to court and if that's considered infringement. I know we've seen articles and stories recently about an AI generated picture that recently won an art prize, and a lot of
Yeah.
artists were not happy about that.
No, not at all. Yeah. So I think it really comes down to, do we consider AI art to be real art? Um,
And then
and
how do you distinguish the two?
yeah,
Because then we saw a case where a BuzzFeed article was talking about artists accused of using AI art when they said they didn't. So, how do you track that?
right now, I have not seen any way to distinguish the two other than tagging your art and saying right out that it's made by you or made by AI.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think it's just going to be, in the future, be really hard to tell what was human made and what was processed through a generator.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes you wonder, is this just another evolution in artistry? Is it like when they discovered how you could make man-made diamonds versus like mining for them all the time? Is this just going to be another tool for artists to use in the future? Or because this algorithm is grabbing work from other artists, is this unethical? And does it need to be something that is not allowed to be used? Or do you think it depends on the situation? Maybe because for this app trend that we've seen going around, it's just people posting on like their Instagram or Facebook. But then again, it makes me think if somebody really does want a professional portrait of themselves, they would in the past go pay an artist for that. So is it taking money from real artists?
Right. I've seen in a few dives on Instagram people posting AI art and saying, "I made this." And so it kind of brings to question, can you really credit somebody with making something like that? And
Hmm.
how is the saturation of the market with AI art going to affect traditional artists?
Is it unethical if people are just using it for like their personal, like when I use that Lensa app and I was able to generate 50 pieces of artwork based on my selfies and posted it, I claimed that, oh, I'm trying this AI app trend. But before it was a trend, if somebody posted that themselves and said, I did this, then it is super sketchy.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't done a ton of research on the apps, so I'm not sure. I can't speak really to how they create the art. They may just have some preset art that they've purchased that they can run through their generator. Can't really speak to how that works.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like there has to be some other template that they use because everybody's has like certain themes that I've seen. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
futuristic theme or like pastels or just
Yeah,
different takes like that. Um, but if somebody were to take one of the pictures that they got from that app and put it into an art show, would it be fair of them if they won the art show?
right. I think what probably needs to happen is there needs to be more of a distinguishment between AI art and then regular art if we're going to have competitions like that. I don't think it's fair to pit people against each other when one has spent maybe an hour or two typing in a string of words to get a result versus somebody who has spent potentially hundreds of hours on a piece. I don't think it's fair to favor the AI art over the traditional art in that sense.
Hmm.
So I think there needs to be some kind of line drawn between the two so we can distinguish which is which and then appraise them appropriately.
Right. Yeah, just to draw a line in the sand and distinguish that these are two very different mediums for creating art. So that way it doesn't get confused and people can't enter into the contest. Because I do think that is kind of that is a little shady if somebody enters in, a generated picture and then
Yeah,
wins a prize versus somebody who actually painted something and like came up with
yeah,
that idea and, you know, sketched it out and did all of the work.
I agree. And then it just falls back into that copyright discussion we were having.
Hmm.
if they win a prize for something that's pulling from other people's artwork, what do you do with that? So
Hmm.
it's really a gray. There's no clear answer right now. I don't think it's right, but that's just my one opinion of many. Have you heard of ArtStation?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so ArtStation is basically this big open site for artists to share their portfolios and their work and stuff. And it's currently the battleground for like the first ever recorded protest against AI.
Oh,
It feels
really?
like such a science fiction thing. It's so weird. So they there's this one AI generator in particular that was using a lot of ArtStation work when it was scraping for images for prompts.
Mm.
Um, because people would type in their prompt and then type trending on ArtStation at the end. Because okay, ArtStation is very popular for concept art and things like that, and there's a very specific kind of style for the concept art on there that I've seen most of. So it would
Okay.
pull from that very high quality concept art kind of look. So it would go on ArtStation and scrape for images all across ArtStation and then pull it into the person's prompt without consent of the artists on ArtStation. And you could clearly tell that some of the art had been influenced by what it had been scraped from ArtStation. So users started posting these graphics of the word AI with like this big bold strike through, and using hashtags like support human artists. So ArtStation is kind of, I think, now trying to add a, a way to tag your art as no AI in an attempt to keep AI users from training their AI off of the artwork on ArtStation.
Mm.
So that's been really interesting to follow. It kind of just brings to question, like, how do we stand up for artists whose work is being basically plagiarized, and how do we regulate what AI developers can train their programs with? So it's just bringing to the forefront a lot of interesting questions.
Absolutely. I think that, this is something that is definitely going to evolve things like copyright law and, plagiarism laws and accusations, because as technology has advanced, these laws and practices are probably going to have to keep up to just make sure that everybody is being fair.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so yeah, I think it's just going to be a big copyright battle, and I hope in the end that there's some resolution and that artists can retain their rights to their art without being afraid that it's going to be scraped by AI and used for other things without their consent.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely interested to follow up with this conversation in the future and see what potential, lawsuits or future stories we may see coming out of this as AI becomes more popular and more readily available to the general public, as we've seen through these apps. So I definitely think it's something to keep an eye out for.
For sure. And I think it's going to become super prevalent just because of the speed at which it's advancing. I think we're going to be seeing more and more of it, especially in the industry. So it may become, we're going to have to find a way to marry the two, to marry the AI art and the traditional design and art. We're going to see if it becomes mandatory to start integrating AI into your workflow, and whether or not, if you refuse to use AI or aren't using it, if you're going to become just kind of obsolete,
Oh,
because it
yeah.
might just be the future of where we're headed. I certainly hope not. I hope that there's always room for human art, but it brings to question, are we coming to up on the end of traditional art and the way that we've always made art? Is it just changing? Um, is it beyond repair at this point? Are we just too far past the beginning of this um, to stop it? I think we probably are. I think it's going to um, definitely touch the industry for sure. I don't think it's ever going to totally erase traditional art. I think people aren't going to stop making art. There's always going to be artists, and um, it may not be as prevalent in the industry anymore. But I think as long as people are passionate about pursuing the arts and doing what they love, I think as long as there's a community that's going to support them, I think real art's always going to be around, or traditional art is always going to be around. So I don't think we need to worry about traditional art going away entirely. It just might not be as prevalent in the industry as it was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Olivia, since this is the Access Success podcast, I do have one more question for you. And that is if you could share a recent success story about yourself or a client or our team. What comes to mind recently in the past few weeks here for you?
Sure. So something I've been working on just personally for some Access social media things is teaching myself some 3D modeling, which has been really interesting. So over Christmas, I got the opportunity to create kind of a little Access Christmas card kind of thing that I 3D
Okay.
modeled myself. So that is on our Instagram, I believe. That was really fun. It was a great learning experience, and it was just really fun to work in 3D. And I have a real appreciation for people who do that as a living because it's not easy. So, and just I want to thank Access for giving me the opportunity to teach myself and learn new things like that. So that was just a great opportunity, and I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Is that similar to like CGI animation, that 3D look when you design something?
Yeah. So it's basically you model things in 3D space, and the way my intention was to have an animation, but I couldn't get that put together in time. But I basically just took a still screenshot of it. But if I were to show you the file, it would be totally in 3D. So everything has shading, and you can move around the set in 3D space. So it's really cool.
Sweet. Yeah, definitely something that a human artist is doing and taking the time to do. So anybody listening today, moral of the story is appreciate your human artists out there. They work very hard, and there are so many different mediums of art today and new technology to use to design these amazingly creative pieces of art. So go look at some real artwork today. That's everybody's homework. Olivia, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And for those listening, if you'd like to learn more, you can head to accessu.com. We put out new blogs and podcast episodes every week. See you next time. Thanks for listening to the Access Success Podcast, produced by AccessU, a division of Access Advertising and Public Relations. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to keep up with what the world of education needs to hear, at AccessU Agency, and connect with us at accessu.com. Let's do something big.